Welcome back. Well, in this video, I finally finish off this rainwater system by building a new pump shed and installing a new filtration system. This is out in one of my paddocks. It's at least 100 meters away from the workshop, probably 200 meters from my house. And I've already prepared a bit of an area here and put services out when I built the rainwater tank. But I don't really like timber posts directly in the ground, so I put these metal post supports, concreted them in already, and I'm now getting ready to start building this shed. So I'm using a 100mm pine post. I've got my generator out here because at the moment obviously there's no power hooked up. And we progressively go around and initially install these posts just with a couple of bolts securing the base. It's personal preference, but I don't like buildings that don't have any eaves. So with this one and all buildings on my property that I've built, I include eaves on the front, back, as well as the sides. And the two posts at the front there, which are closer together, is sort of like a bit of an entry point just to provide shade and shelter where I'll finally have a door. This area is on a bit of a slope, so what I did is I just used my laser to figure out the height to make sure that the tops were all level. And the excavators come in handy to transport things out here because it is a bit of a walk and they're sort of pretty heavy. It's a heavy construction. So I'll put the floor frame in. That's 190 by 45 or 8 by 2s, close enough, and a couple of 120 by 45s to support the top. And once I get the main frame around for the floor, I run a heap of joists at 400. They're about 450mm centers. Just nail gun them in. Now once I had the floor set up, I decided to use marine ply, 18mm. It is a bit more expensive than chipboard, but I think it's going to last a bit longer. And there's a chance there might be water in here if there's ever a leak from my transfer pumps and that. So I'd rather just do it properly. So I put that in, cut around the post. I did design this so that it would fit exactly one sheet, full sheet. And at this point, I've made the trusses and cut notches to sit on to the main frame. And I'm going to space these at about 500mm centers, except for the rear and the front where there's 200mm overhang, which you'll see a bit later. So I get these up. It was a bit easier actually once I had the floor in because I had a nice flat surface to work from the ladder. And that's the roof finished. And at this point I start the frame for the wall. So my idea is just to have a couple of windows, provide some ventilation. And then what I'm going to do is clad this with what most people use as fence palings as treated pine, but I like using it for this sort of building. And this frame just obviously gives that cladding something to bolt to. Now I had some windows left over from building the workshop and double glaze, which is way overkill for something like this, but I had them, so I thought why not use them. And there's the frame done, and I'm going to start putting the cladding on. So as I said, I use fence palings. These are the 150 by 17. You can get these in 12mm thick as well, but I like the 17 because they tend to not warp as much. And I've built another building like this probably about 10 years ago, and it's still in really good condition with the same palings, so I'm quite happy with those. So I take my time. I made a little tool there, you see, just to space them out properly and make sure they're the same all the way around. And I progressively just work my way around this building until I get all this cladding fitted. Now, I mentioned before, I did spend a bit of time making sure the frame was square, and getting it square just makes it easy when you put roofing on or cladding or windows or anything like that. So I feel that it's a bit of a no-brainer. Spend a bit more time, get it right, and it makes the rest of the install a lot easier. So I cut my way around the windows, and it's starting to look pretty good. So in the gable, I sealed that as well because I don't want birds. We've got you know, all sorts of wildlife around here. If I left that open, guaranteed there'd be birds nesting in there. And I just put a vent because we have quite hot summers in Australia. Now, this acetylene product is what I did use on the workshop as well, and I had some left over, and I figured why not use it here because it will reduce the heat from the iron roof in the summers we have. And from the inside, I think, you know, it looks pretty neat as well, that acetylene. The roof is the same as the workshop, wood and grey, just corrugated iron, and it was much easier. They're only about 1.5 meters long each sheet, not even that, so it didn't take too long to put the roof on. I just used a couple of string lines to know exactly where to put the screws. I didn't put any gutters, obviously, because it's so small, and there's a dam right beside this area, so the water will just run off the sides, no problem. Well, that's the roof all done. I've still got to put the door in, I've still got to put the windows in, but at this point, I've run all the electrics, it's ready for its final connection, and I'm starting to install the actual filtration system, which I went with the PureTech. I've lived on another acreage and had this system. I think it's a really good system, so I went for the same one again and went for a Grundfos pump. Again, high quality pump, shouldn't have any problems. Now, for those wondering, we don't have mains water on this property, it's only rainwater, and this system here provides highly filtered water, goes through a UV light, completely safe to drink, and we use this over the entire property. We've been drinking rainwater for 10 years now, and we've got no problems with it whatsoever. In fact, when I go to the city, I can taste the difference in mains water. Now, I pulled these out just to check the filters, and lucky, not a big deal, but the supplier left a bit of strapping in there, so I took that out and just making sure everything was right.
Now this is actually the UV light. I think there's a controller. This is a good design. So what you got is inside here, there's a glass tube, and that glass tube goes all the way down to the bottom, and then the water goes around the glass tube, and then inside that tube, which is isolated from the water, there's a UV light, which I'll put in now. And the UV light just kills any bacteria that might be left after it's been properly filtered. Alright, so this UV light does have to get changed once in a while, and I think there's an alarm on this unit. Now, you don't want to touch this with your hands, and I must say I really like this design, because it simply just plugs in here and then pushes straight down. So that plugs in. Take this off without touching it. Very nice. Now we just carefully put this in. At the bottom of that glass tube there's a spring which sort of holds the bottom. That just sits in there like that, and then there's a little earth wire. Alright, so I'm pretty much done now. I'll just take you through the system. What I've done is I have my rainwater tank just outside here. It's actually in a paddock. I've got to put a window here still. This tank, there's a video earlier about a year ago, or probably a bit more. It's 185,000 litres or 50,000 gallons, so there's plenty of water, but we only have rainwater, so I don't want to run out. And I've situated it in a paddock, so it's miles out the way. Anyways, because there's a fire risk in this area, all piping above ground is copper, so you can see the valve at the bottom of that tank. and with the isolator it goes underground about a foot, and then it goes to blue line. So that pipe comes into the suction here, goes into the pump. So this is a Grundfos pump. I've learned from properties like this, it's well worth just spending the money getting really good stuff, because you don't want to mess with this in the future. Now, if you have a rainwater system and you notice that when you turn your tap on, there's like a low pressure delay, it's almost like the pump hasn't cut in yet. And the reason for that is all pumps have an on-off control, and if you don't have this thing here, which is a surge tank, those couple of seconds you can't maintain pressure. So if you have that, all you need to do, install a surge tank on the high pressure side, and it won't be any different to having city water. From here, this will be, I'm going to set this to 5 bar, 500 kPa, or for those in the US and other countries, that's about 70 PSI. So from the discharge, it comes into the inlet. This is a pure tech system, and this starts off with a 5 micron filter, then it goes 1 micron, and then it goes into this UV light, which kills any bacteria that's left. From there, it comes out. I've got an isolator, and then that goes to my property. Now, for maintenance purposes, I've obviously got an isolator on the inlet and outlet, and I've got this valve here, which is just so that I can bleed the pressure out if I ever have to replace the glass tube in here or a filter. And the other thing I did is I just run this in copper, just because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I run up a gauge. So as I said, you want to do this properly. If there's ever a problem with water pressure, I can come out here, I can see what the pressure is, and I've got my tools, got power. The other thing you should normally do is fit a surge protector. So when I get power out here, I'll put this in, and then I'll plug the unit so it's surge protected. And then hopefully I don't have to come out here very often. Only just to check on things, really, and it should be very maintenance free. As I said, you've got to change that UV lamp maybe once every year or so. But I think this system's quite good, and the sheds come up good, and finally I'll have nice fresh water going to my entire property, including the workshop. So I needed this in so I can get water to the workshop. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Any questions, put down in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video.